Before coming into this, I want to state right off the bat that I still, to this day, absolutely love Avengers Endgame. I think that it did so many things right, and while I never thought it was as good as Infinity War, I still thought it was an incredible, satisfying conclusion to the overall Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that overall it managed to give most of its characters such a satisfying payoff after 10 years of build-up. Having Cap being able to live out a normal life, or having Tony Stark sacrifice himself to save the whole universe, other payoffs such as Black Widow, Hawkeye, Rocket, and everything that's set up for the future is nothing short of fantastic in this movie. However, while most things in this movie are handled really well, and while I would say most of the characters were given proper treatment, there is one character that never did in my eyes. That character is Thanos, the main villain. Now, this is sad to me, because Infinity War had Thanos as such a prevalent and fascinating character. He wasn't just one of these villains for the Avengers to stop. He legitimately had his own motivations, his own compelling nature, his very distinguished personality, and a very interesting philosophy that people would want to look into. All of these things, though, that made him such a great and compelling character, though, in Infinity War, is absent from Avengers Endgame. And this is why I can't help but say that Avengers Endgame did ruin Thanos. Now, why is that? The film begins relatively well. Honestly, I would say with Endgame, it handles Thanos pretty well up until the moment he gets killed. Now, let's get into where Thanos starts off. He's within his farm, retired after feeling fulfilled from his life goal, and now just kind of resting. And generally speaking, this is fine. And I'm actually really impressed by the visuals that they indicated within Endgame. The way it just shows him going about his daily life is nothing short of really impressive with the use of its effects, given the entire thing is digital. And then we get to the point where the Avengers ambush him. Now, this is where I will say Thanos personality-wise has been relatively consistent within this opening. He's angry at first, but that's mainly only because he's in pain after losing an entire arm, and then instantly reverts back to his calm, collected self that we're used to from Infinity War. However, this is where the first mistake gets in. The stones are gone, and Thanos explains that he used the stones to destroy the stones. Now, on the surface, this makes a lot of sense. Thanos never really wanted to rule the universe or anything. He just wanted to fulfill his life goal and be done with it. However, this is where this isn't a problem with his character traits as much as his character's philosophy. Thanos destroyed half of the universe for no reason. It's not like that was the case. He destroyed it in order to save the other half from scarcity of resources. Now, here's where the problem comes in. This philosophy, this goal, is completely contradicted when Thanos destroys the stones, because inevitably the population is going to reproduce at a point to where, another snap would be required. And now since the stones are gone, that can no longer be executed. This could have been easily remedied had Thanos just said something like, "I gave the stones a permanent command," or something along those lines before destroying them. Something like, for every time a new human being is born, older human being gets, snapped away. And this applies for all of eternity, or something along those lines. I'm sure, these writers are clever, they're not stupid, so I'm pretty sure they could find a way to remedy that. But the problem is they never did, which instantly makes the entire philosophy of Thanos contradict what he does, making him look like a big idiot. Now, again, Infinity War Thanos wasn't exactly, I would say, he's not exactly the smartest guy in the room. But the thing about Thanos is even though his logic in Infinity War was very flawed, at least he was consistent with that logic. Endgame completely contradicts this. I see so many people give crap about the 2014 Thanos, and trust me, we'll be getting there soon. But this is an issue that occurs from the very beginning, and honestly, what sucks about this is that it makes Thanos look like a big idiot, and the whole thing could have been remedied with a little bit of dialogue. But yeah, aside from that though, they keep his personality rather consistent, and I actually like the way that he starts displaying a bit more remorse on the matters, of stating, yeah, it can't be undone, and most particularly says to Nebula, perhaps I treated you too harshly, looking back at the things that he's done in his life. And honestly, I'll get to this in part 2 where I will be presenting alternate ways they could have made Endgame Thanos better. But honestly, this seemed like a really good setup for potential storytelling related to Thanos and Nebula. However, before that can go anywhere, Thor sort of just slices off the greatest thing about Infinity War in a matter of a second. Look, I will admit, the first time I saw the movie, I didn't really think about it too much, and I wasn't, too mad about it. But the problem is that how I feel in an emotional response while watching the movie is not the same as criticizing the movie after the fact. This is the reason why I almost always see a movie a second time before giving it a proper review. Because whenever I see it the first time, I come out mainly with emotion and I'm not thinking with my head. I mean, movies can be really deceiving within their first watching, both for better and worse. Sometimes you don't notice flaws within a movie until the second time you see it because you're looking for it. Unlike the first time, you know the scenes are coming, and you know you can point out flaws with it, unlike the first time you watch a movie, where you kind of just have to go with things as they move along, and it only takes a really major flaw to actually notice. So, yeah, after seeing Endgame the second time and third time, I think I watched it 4 times while in theaters. 3 times when it first released, and then 1 time when it did the re-release. And I have since watched the movie once when it got onto DVD, Blu-ray, digital, that sort of thing. So, I've seen this movie enough times to point things out. As much as I haven't seen it even half of the amount I've seen Infinity War, it's still a decent amount, so I digress. But this is where I highlight the issues where ever since the second time I saw the movie, it was a lot easier to point things out with Thanos. Especially since, for goodness sakes, my girlfriend pointed them out the first time she saw it, which was my second time. It was something we discussed together on our way home from the movie. And it's like, for goodness sakes, she emphasized how the plan kind of didn't make any sense. How, wouldn't Thanos destroying the stones just kind of undermine his entire plan? And I was like, yeah, it probably would. And this is where I kind of instantly found this problem with present Thanos, is that, again, the whole thing doesn't really make much sense when you actually look into his philosophy and his goal and his plan for the universe. However, like I said, as much as it was an issue, it was an issue I was willing to push past. It wasn't like the end of the world to me. Now, when 2014 Thanos first got revealed, my thoughts were instantly, holy freaking crap, he looks like a freaking bad A. The entrance, everything looks freaking awesome. And I thought, you know what? This is actually kind of cool, They're actually using time travel to reintroduce him as a villain, to get a foresight on his younger self and how things were like back then. You know what? Maybe this could be cool. Maybe this could be a way they could redeem themselves from some of the writing shortcomings that 2018 Thanos had. And I was like, you know what? I'm on board. let's see what they do with it. And they do little to nothing leading up to the third act. Really, the entirety of the second act, people try to say the whole thing, that Thanos in Endgame is the main villain, and I mean, from a technical standpoint, that is correct, but, like, he really is only the main villain within the third act. It's like the first act, present Thanos gets killed at the, like, within the 20-minute mark, and then it's like, for over, I think it was like, for like an hour and 30 minutes or something, Thanos isn't, like, used as a villain at all, and then he's not even reintroduced till, like, 30 to 40 minutes later. I'm not entirely sure, I'll have to look up the time again, but it's like he's not even reintroduced till much later in the film, during the time heist. But it's like he doesn't do anything. There's nothing that he does, so it's like, the mindset I'm kind of using for this is just like, why? The whole thing with 2014 Thanos is literally the entire second act. He's just figuring out what happened. You know, he's pretty much playing catch up with the audience. And to me, I mean, I get why it's there, but like, to me, it just seems like a lot of time wasted. I mean, could they have not had a way of him figuring things out sooner? You know, having a way of the, like, you know, maybe having a side effect of the time travel? I don't know, something, anything. It's like, instead, the whole thing is with the Nebula Skype, which, I mean, to be frank, I actually don't have a problem with that. I mean, I know a lot of people say, oh, it's overly convenient that that happened, and it's like, okay. It's not like Marvel movies haven't done conveniences before. It's not like they haven't made stuff up as they go along before. It's not like this hasn't happened, so I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is that the way this is set up makes it where for the entirety of the second act, there's nothing for Thanos. There's nothing that he's doing. Supposedly, Thanos, and, you know, within the earlier drafts, back with deleted scenes being accounted for, apparently it was supposed to have it where Thanos within his own timeline was going to be serving as a more direct obstacle for the time heist. That, like, you know, when Hawkeye and Black Widow were trying to get the Soul Stone, for instance, Thanos would arrive and, like, try to stop them from doing it, and he would actually have, like, a 1v1 fight with a 2014 Captain Marvel. And I mean, I admit that from a thematic purpose, it probably wouldn't be the best thing, but for a character purpose, it actually probably would have worked very well. Because again, it's like 2014 Thanos throughout the entirety of the second act doesn't do anything. And then we get to the third act, which completely destroys Thanos as a character. I mean, this is where they convert Thanos from, you know, from where he was at Infinity War, being this actual, really human character, as someone that we could actually, like, connect to and be invested in, similar to the Avengers, to, in the second act, him just kind of being there. Like, they haven't done anything insulting, but they haven't done anything interesting either. And then we get to the third act, where they completely throw away his character. Like I said, I didn't really have much of a problem with the way they portrayed his character in the second act. I had a problem with his stake in the plot. But, you know, as long as he... I mean, they haven't done anything insulting. And they treated it fairly realistic. Now, I do think it was probably the most simplistic and lazy way they could present his past self within this whole thing. It's definitely the most simplistic one, and he doesn't really have the layers that Infinity War Thanos had, not even close. He doesn't even have the layers that, like, the first act Thanos from Infinity War had, which is really disappointing, but, I mean, it was bearable. Like I said, as much as they didn't do anything interesting, at least nothing was insulting either. But then we get to the third act. So, for context, literally it has it where Thanos figures out everything that happens. his plan succeeds, the Avengers kill him, so Nebula ends up getting the Pym particle from her future self, and Thanos sends her to the future, to 2023, and then has her use the time machine to bring Thanos and his army to the future with the ships. Now, first off, this is where I'm going to highlight a little bit of lazy writing outside of Thanos, but it still connects. They do not explain how Thanos' ship gets through the time machine. Like, they don't explain how he's going to have the Pym particles to do that. I mean, outside material said that it's like Thanos and Ebony Maw replicated the Pym particles, but it's like they don't say this in the movie. And I've already stated before, and even this movie I can't make an exception with. If I have to leave the movie to understand what's going on, that aspect of your movie has failed. I digress, though. That was just a minor thing I wanted to criticize, since that's kind of the entire reasoning of the third act. Oh, and also the fact that the third act could have been avoided had future Nebula just gone to the future immediately after sending the message back to Hawkeye and Black Widow. But again, I'll get into all that when we talk about the time travel. But now we're within the third act, and this is where they just completely destroy Thanos' character. I mean, it starts with, like, him sending Nebula to collect the stones, which is fine. I mean, he sits there while doing it, which is just kind of like, I don't know, it's just one of those things I'm kind of like, really? But again, it's nothing insulting and it's nothing too out of character, so I was like, alright, fine. But he gets more arrogant and that type of stuff, and like I said, I mean, it's okay until it leads to the point where the Avengers confront him. And this is where they completely screwed up his motivations. So basically, it has Thanos saying,
"You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me. I thought by eliminating half of life, the other half would thrive. But you've shown me that's impossible. And as long as there are those that remember what was, there will always be those that are unable to accept what can be. They will resist.
Yep, we're all kinds of stubborn.
I'm thankful. Because now, I know what I must do. I will shred this universe down to its last atom. And then, with the stones you've collected for me, create a new one, teeming with life, that knows not what it has lost, but only what it has been given. A grateful universe.
Born out of blood.
They'll never know it. Because you won't be alive to tell them.
And then the fight begins. And before I get into anything related to the fight and, the overall climax of the movie, oh my god, what the freak were they thinking? So, okay, the minute Thanos figures out that his plan doesn't work, he decides, oh yeah, I'm just gonna kill the whole universe and remake it. And this has so many problems, both logically as well as it not fitting into his character at all. So, let me go through this. Alright, logically it doesn't make sense for a few reasons. First off, Thanos decides wiping out the entire universe is going to be like the baseline solution, even though he could easily accomplish the same thing by just doing a memory wipe of the survivors. And, it's like he has, he could easily do it with the Mind Stone. I mean, there's no reason why it can't, or no reason it shouldn't be able to, unless the movie clearly establishes he can't, which it doesn't. And then secondly, this is a complete genocide, of like his entire character. The entire reason he wanted to get the stones in Infinity War and wipe away half of life was to save the other half, to basically conserve resources and prevent the universe from being completely finite, finite, and, you know, having all life get destroyed. Like, literally, Endgame Thanos is doing the precise thing IW Thanos was trying to prevent. How does that make any sense? And not only, I mean, like, literally, the whole thing is just, again, Thanos' entire motivation within Infinity War was that he was trying to save lives. Now, again, he had his own twisted and screwed up way of doing it. I mean, this is where Infinity War Thanos, what made him such a compelling character was that he felt like he was the hero of his own story. He looked at himself as the universe's savior. He literally had a savior complex. And the whole thing was he thought that, you know, what he was doing was best for the universe and that they would one day understand, you know, when the universe would, in his mind, would one day be thriving. And he came to the conclusion, like, yeah, the universe will one day thrive, and when that happens, people will one day understand why I took the actions I did and would in turn, quote-unquote, be grateful for it. When Thanos says, you know, a grateful universe, or like, you know, I'll watch the sunrise on a grateful universe, it doesn't mean that people are instantly, like, okay, if the writers intended it to be this way, I'm sorry, it's just retarded. But, you know, when Thanos says that, the way I've always interpreted it, and the way that many people have interpreted it, has always been the fact that, you know, Thanos isn't an idiot. He's been living for hundreds, if not thousands of years. He's not going to expect the universe to instantly thank him. In fact, in many ways it would be a thankless burden. No, what he meant by a grateful universe was the whole idea of kind of like Gamora's world. Yeah, the suffering was there at the beginning. Yeah, people were sad, they were depressed, but one day, you know, things got better and, you know, life was thriving. Things were going great. And that, and, you know, in his logic, you know, the Gamora's world is probably now happier on their home world than they ever would have been otherwise. And that was the whole point of Thanos. Was, again, he developed the savior complex due to what happened on his home world. Because his home world died, and he thinks it died because they didn't listen to him. That it didn't even take his thoughts into consideration and just took the easy route and called him a madman. So then when the world dies, when his home planet dies, he instantly thinks, what I said was correct. That this is the only way to save the universe. That the universe will end up suffering the same fate as my home planet unless I take action, unless I have the will to act on what I know. That was the entire point of Thanos in Infinity War. And yeah, it made it where Thanos was cold, ruthless. He, you know, like I said, he would kill and torture if it was necessary. He wasn't going to let anything get in the way of his goal. But again, take that word, he would only kill and torture when it was deemed necessary. He wasn't this bloodthirsty maniac. He wasn't this type of person who would just kill people for simple gratification. I mean, he only killed Loki at the beginning of Infinity War for attempting to assassinate him, and for Thanos being frustrated at his incompetence. And again, only kills Heimdall for the same reason, because he became a direct obstacle to him. Ever since then, he didn't kill anyone else in the movie. He didn't kill Star-Lord, he didn't kill, you know, the Avengers, he didn't kill, frickin', you know, Guardians of the Galaxy, he didn't kill any of them. Yes, he kills Gamora, but that's only so he could acquire the Soul Stone, and it's made abundantly clear in the movie how painful of a decision that was for him. The only people afterwards he even tried to kill was Iron Man, and again, that was only because Iron Man was literally... Thanos recognized that Iron Man was in many ways like him, that he wasn't gonna stop, that there was no beating him into submission, that Iron Man would keep getting up no matter what, finding some other way to attack him, because Iron Man was exactly like him, and that was the reason why Thanos committed to trying to kill Iron Man, because he knew Iron Man, personality-wise, was almost exactly like him. Well, maybe not personality, but, you know, the will to act. And it just, you know, it doesn't work to have it where now Thanos is just this bloodthirsty monster who wants to wipe out the entire universe, recreate it, and just become a god. That's the whole thing now. It's just Thanos wants to be a god now. And it's just like, really? Now, I have seen constant people try to rationalize this and say that it makes sense. No, it doesn't. Like, okay, again, I've seen many arguments, and I mean, some hold better merits than others. Some try to say because he's like a narcissist, it means like, he's spiteful and stuff, and it's like, okay, you could try to say that, but then why wouldn't Thanos be angry at the Avengers in Infinity War? I mean, he spared all of them. The only time he killed the Avengers and the Guardians was when the snap happened, and that's because he wanted it to be, like, fair for everyone. I mean, Thanos being that conscious about not killing people in Infinity War would not all of a sudden turn to, oh, I'm gonna murder the whole frickin' universe just because a group of 8 people did time travel to try to undo what I did. Like, did he really expect that every single being wasn't gonna try to resist him? That every single being wasn't gonna try to undo what he did? Did he really expect that? For a being that accumulated the wisdom of hundreds, if not thousands of years? I mean, again, it's already confirmed by the MCU that Thanos is an Eternal, so it's like, this guy has lived for like thousands of years, and they're gonna have it where he acts like a spoiled little child. Like, really? And again, I've seen other things like him being, oh, he's a sociopath, and so he wouldn't regard life, or other things that, like, he only did it to prove a point. He doesn't actually care about life, that it's like, it's all just a front, similar to like Light Yagami, where it's all just a power trip. And, I mean, while that one's probably closest to the truth, like the whole saving lives thing's just a mask, and, it's actually just becoming a power trip and a god complex. I mean, while that is the closest to the truth and probably what Endgame intended, it still doesn't work. Because it's like, again, there's still many things from Infinity War that would contradict that. And then, because again, the whole thing with Infinity War is him clarifying his motivations to literally almost everyone. And not only that, but if Thanos truly had this major god complex, where he just wanted to experience this power trip, then he wouldn't have destroyed the stones. He wouldn't have retired. He wouldn't have just spent the rest of the days in the farm. He would have freaking been out there trying to present to the whole universe, hey, I'm your freaking holy savior. And yeah, that part just doesn't make any sense. I mean, yeah, even that one, which again holds the most merit in terms of logic, is still flawed, and it's still contradictory. So again, my theory on this is just the writers wrote themselves in a corner, because again, Thanos has all 6 stones in Infinity War, and the writers are thinking, well, he's pretty much unstoppable. There's no way for the Avengers to realistically beat him, so like, we gotta kill him off, and then replace it with this more ruthless type Thanos and stuff to give the Avengers a chance of beating him. And again, whether or not that's true is besides the point. You don't take a cop-out method to write yourself out of a corner. In fact, I know this because behind the scenes, the writers were discussing this, and basically one of them presented, why not just kill him? And that's the route they took. So literally, this killing off Infinity War Thanos and replacing it with Endgame Thanos, and when I say Endgame Thanos, I mean 2014 Thanos, it wasn't made out of what's best for the story. It was made of, how can we quickly write ourselves out of a corner that we put ourselves in? And I don't know, I mean, assuming Endgame was written shortly after Infinity War, maybe, I don't know, maybe the writers just didn't expect the feedback they got from Infinity War, with how people loved Thanos so ridiculously much. Alright, maybe they just weren't expecting it, but still, I have to, until anything's confirmed, I have to, like, assume that they had the power to do some writing control with this, and still, like I said, even if this made logical sense, which to me it doesn't, and to many other people it doesn't, even if it did, could you really say that it's the best story route they could go? Again, you're converting a villain that, in Infinity War was complex, multi-dimensional, who had motivations that, while you could disagree with, you at least understood while he had them. A villain that made sacrifices, a villain that was able to freaking cry in an Avengers movie, who wasn't just a generic evil robot, or a freaking just, oh, I just want to rule the universe. I mean, I don't care when people, I swear, there are some people that go as far as to say where, oh, Endgame Thanos is better than Infinity War because he's closer to the comics. Okay, whether or not you have that opinion, I mean, it's your opinion, so whatever, but like, that's irrelevant. I don't care if Endgame Thanos is closer to him in the comics. Infinity War established him as a complete separate character. You don't just change the entire mindset of a character from a previous movie and still expect it to make sense. So it's like, no, I will not accept that either. So it's like, yeah, even if it did make sense, which it doesn't, the whole thing is just, it's not the best route. You know, they could have easily still wrote Thanos to be a decently relatable character. Again, even if they wanted to show the quote-unquote dark side of Thanos, which, you know, I would have been perfectly okay with, they needed to do it organically and not just have it where, oh, screw my old motivation, screw the thing that I've been working for hundreds of years to do. Yeah, screw all that, just, let's just kill the whole universe. Yeah, screw everyone over something 8 people did. I mean, for goodness sakes, Endgame Thanos didn't even see the state of the universe. He didn't see if the rest of the universe was or wasn't happy by what he did. As far as he knows, you know, as far as he could know, the rest of the universe might have been happy and grateful for what he did, and it's only the Avengers being spoiled little brats trying to undo it. And yet he's gonna say, screw the whole universe over something the Avengers did. And it's just like, it doesn't work. It doesn't freaking work. And it only gets worse. Because it's like after the fight, Thanos ends up saying the one line, and I swear this is where any remaining semblance of his credibility, this is where Thanos has become a complete different character. I mean, during the fight itself, he's just, I mean, I can understand why he has to fight harder. He doesn't have the stones anymore, and I mean, that's fine. Him being angry and that sort of thing, and him fighting with this, you know, different degree, this higher degree of ruthlessness, I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is how freaking bloodthirsty he is. Literally, he has the whole thing where it's like he's trying to stab Thor with the axe, and he's like doing this kind of almost evil laugh with it, and I'm just like, why? Could you not just have it where Thanos just gives an angry look or something, like, you know, kind of the look like, hey, I know you killed me, I am going to kill you now. It's just something that doesn't make him seem like a frickin' Bond villain. But no, instead he's like laughing maniacally almost, you know, doing this like laughing breath, and it's like Cap then does his fight with him, and, you know, the fight happens. And then again, after the event, the trio, Thor, Iron Man, and Cap are beat, Thanos then drops the frickin' mic with this line, and by mic I mean any semblance of his original character. He says, "In all my years of conquest and violence and slaughter, it was never personal, but I'll tell you now, what I'm about to do to your stubborn, annoying little planet, I am going to enjoy it. Very, very much." Even my first watch of Endgame, that line just felt completely off. At first, I could never point to what it was, but now I know why. Because literally, they converted Thanos from the greatest strength of Infinity War to a frickin' ERJB. In case you don't know what that means, it's Evil Robot Jeff Bridges. It's basically the abbreviation to describe every, like, mediocre to bad Marvel villain within this cinematic universe. And literally, that's what they converted Endgame Thanos into. I mean, is there any complexity to him anymore? Any relatable qualities? Anything that would make you go like, yeah, I can understand this guy. This guy is actually someone that I can understand, I can sympathize with. It's like they've thrown all that out the window in service of, oh, let's just make this simplistic villain for the Avengers to be. Honestly, like, this was the point where I was almost like, are the writers purposely trying to be spiteful to the community that, you know, like the part community that of the whole, like, Thanos did nothing wrong sub-community, or, you know, just the people who really loved Thanos and, like, viewed him as, like, the main character of Infinity War? Is the writers, I legitimately want to know this. Are the writers purposely trying to be spiteful to those people? That was the point where I was just like... And unfortunately, that was the point where it's like Thanos is damaged beyond repair. And I mean, oh my gosh, this video is already going on for 40 minutes. So, I gotta wrap this up. I'll probably explain my other points in part 2, where I'm gonna get into how they could have fixed Thanos, how they could have made him so much better in Endgame. Some will be minor change, like, you know, some scenarios will be minor changes that could still fit with the plot line, while others would have to alter the plot a little, to some being like almost complete rewrites. But I mean, I'll have to make a second video for that because this video is going on far too long. But point is, guys, did Avengers Endgame ruin Thanos? Yes, they absolutely did. Again, they turned a character that was the greatest strength of Infinity War into the greatest weakness in Endgame. And considering that Endgame has Captain Marvel in it, that should not be a thing. That is a problem. It's like, yeah, Endgame Thanos is pretty much a piece of crap. I mean, like I said, greatest strength of Infinity War, and by the end, he is like the worst thing about Avengers Endgame. Like I said, and it's just, I think, again, what's sad about it is that it's not even a thing that, like, you know, it doesn't come out of left field completely. It's one of those things where it's like his quality as a character gradually gets worse as the movie goes along. It's like, again, he starts out from Infinity War where his character overall is consistent, but he has the frickin' dumb A thing with the stones, where Thanos acts like a complete dumbass and destroys the Infinity Stones and pretty much undermines his entire ideology, his entire philosophy, his entire, you know, goal. He undermines all of it through that, and then he gets killed off. And then, again, in the second half, you have a Thanos that, you know, there's nothing insulting, but there's nothing interesting about him either. And he doesn't do anything that affects the plot. And then you get to the third act where they freaking completely turn Thanos into a different character. I mean, I guess if people love the comic Thanos so much, I guess they'll be happy then, but it's like, again, it's like, you don't freaking change your internal continuity to make them closer to the comics. I mean, I don't care if Infinity War Thanos wasn't like the comics. He was still a great character in his own merits. And that's what was great about Infinity War Thanos. Is that he was a different character from the comics, and it worked. It frickin' worked. Alright, and it showed, you know, the thing I've always wanted it to show was, you don't always have to make your characters completely like their comic counterpart to make them good. But it's like Endgame completely undoes that, and just turns him back into generic evil craphead. And I know there are other peoples that try to justify themselves where it's like, oh, well, Thanos was like very evil and stuff within Guardians of the Galaxy 1 because of that scene with Ronan. And I'm like, first off, context. Ronan was acting like an incompetent idiot, which it's been clear through Thanos' entire character that he doesn't tolerate that. And then the second thing is, this is back before the writers knew what to do with Thanos yet. I mean, James Gunn was just introducing him as, you know, the overall mastermind of the MCU. And it was meant to be very, like, simplistic. That way, you know, the writers could kind of do whatever they wanted with him after. And, again, it led to Infinity War, where, again, the traits that were set up were still intact. But Endgame completely undoes it. So, overall, yeah. Did Avengers Endgame ruin Thanos? Yes, it did. But doing another thing, though, I still love Avengers Endgame. And I think I have to make that clear with people. Films are more than just the sum of their parts, and while I will never forgive this movie for what it did to probably one of my favorite villains across any movie ever. At least one of them. Honestly, I think the only villain in cinematic history that even rivals this, in my view. Well, really, I can only think of two. Darth Vader and Joker from The Dark Knight. That's how great Infinity War Thanos was to me. And yeah, I will never forgive Endgame for what they did. But that doesn't mean I hate Avengers Endgame, and I want that to be clear. I still love this movie. It's still easily an 8 out of 10 movie to me. So yeah, I don't like Endgame as much now as I did back when it first came out, but it's still overall a great movie and a fantastic send-off to all the other characters. Because that's the thing, it did so many other characters right. It did Iron Man right, it did Captain America right, it did Ant-Man really well, it did Hawkeye really well, Rocket, Black Widow. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, other than Iron Man / Tony, Black Widow might be the best character of the movie. And even though I disagreed with the direction they took with Thor and Hulk, I could say it was at least decently executed. Not great, but not terrible either. And maybe I'll make a video about Hulk and Thor in the future, but like, I just want to make that clear, guys, that I still find Endgame a great movie. And a fantastic Marvel movie. It's just, the problem with it, though, is that the way they brought Thanos in, the way they just handled Thanos in Endgame, took what potentially could have been a masterpiece and just made it a great movie. And I think that's the only thing that's sad, is the wasted potential. And that's why I will forever love Infinity War more. Well, that's about it. So, until the next video, this is King Orange, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.